Steph, would you like to maybe share a bit? Because I know you've got experience of lots of local, but do you have experience of working with crises that have happened on an international scale?
Um, Only on the receiving side of trying to find out information about international crisis. I have family in Christchurch in New Zealand, and during the 22nd of February quake over there, their house was significantly damaged, and the electrics and their phone lines and everything had gone down. And the only way I could find out what was going on was through social media. Quickly established which the hashtags were being used by the people locally and started following people and set up a searching history for the tag and was finding that information. And it got to a point actually where I knew more about what was going on than my uncle did over there.
Hmm.
By the time I'd managed to get in touch with him, I had information about electricity supplies, the fact that the telephone agencies were making all of their telephone boxes free for the locals to use because none of their landlines were working correctly, where the food trucks were, where the clean water was being supplied from, and I was passing that information on to him. And the reason that worked so well was because the local experience of people using social media on the ground, the local agencies were using it very well. Now, Christchurch City Council weren't even on any form of social media prior to the 22nd of February, even though they'd had a series of quakes. And technically, the 22nd of February quake was an aftershock to the September quake before. But because it was more devastating and the damage was more widespread, they felt there had to be a need. And obviously, the communication channels that were just down, there was no way of getting news out. People weren't even getting newspapers because people couldn't get in the streets to deliver them.
So that's a lot of power of almost like crowdsourcing, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
it's not the official organisation such as the Red Cross and WHO that are, giving out the positive, the reassuring messages. This is actually people help, residents, citizens helping themselves. So there's a lot
It
to be
was
said.
also the local partners all jumped in. So the power companies was on Twitter. So that's what I mean about local information. It's not just about citizens. I mean, a lot had to come from citizens to make it as powerful as it was. But the fact that the local, like Orion Energy and the telecommunications agencies were all on Twitter, the local council, like I say, the Christchurch City Council, got on Twitter very fast, very quickly, established a reputation of being a hub of everything, and they were very quickly picking up the conversation, reassuring people and sending information out. Sarah, which was the government body that was put up to deal with the aftermath of the quake, they got on Twitter. EQC, which is the Earthquake Commission that dealt with all the insurance claims and all the repairs after the earthquake, they very fastly got on Twitter. So all of the local agencies that were responsible for responding to the crisis picked up on the social media because they understood that's where their citizens were communicating and really ran with it. And actually it helped on an international level because there were people, like me in the UK, desperate for information with no standard communication networks available to me. And the information was there to the point where, as I say, I managed to actually get more information than they could on the ground because of the problems they were having with quake to help pass on. So I think I think there's two issues, looking at international communications and how to solve problems, picking it up, and how you deal with something locally. And I mean, that comes back to the right to the fire and everything with Hampton as well. It has to be dealt with differently on different scales, doesn't it?
Right.
All right, thanks a lot for that. I think we are, I'm just taking some notes as we speak, and despite that the connection is a bit up and down, I think we have an interesting conversation going. I feel like what we're coming back to again and again is the importance of both monitoring and, I mean, whether it's to source the information, if you want, that are out on the social web, in particular during local as well as large-scale crises or disaster. So I think the key learning one is that any organization who, if you want, responds to a crisis must be set up a tool, set up a platform to be able to monitor social media. Do you have any experience using, say, either free or commercial platforms? I mean, I know that at Red Cross we're using a platform called Radiant 6, which is a commercial software through which we can set up, if you want, search parameters and browse microblogs, social networks, and so on for certain keywords. But do you have any other experiences? What tools do you use? Is it TweetDeck or you use Google Alerts? Or I mean, maybe Adeline. I mean, I know that you're studying still, but have you any experience using any platform for monitoring social media?
No, not for as far as I'm concerned. No, not for me.
Okay. And sorry, I mean, how do you guys do at WHO?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What different platforms or tools do you use to monitor conversation taking place on social media platforms like Twitter?
Yeah, we use several different platforms that are available out there for free, which because I mean we are here operating in small budget, so we really use a lot of whatever that are available out there for free. For example, like Monitor.
Monitor?
Yes.
Hang on.
It's
MON. That's the one, right?
MONITER.
Monitor.com, right.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
or TweetDeck as well. It's probably pretty basic, not necessarily giving you a lot of analytics, but I think for monitoring in a tight budget, that's very useful.
Yeah, yeah.
Steph, is there anything you use to monitor anything that's going on out there?
And I was just putting something in the chat about that as well. I use Hootsuite, and the reason I do this is because I have separate pages set up for the different accounts I manage, but I have one tab purely for search. So I have different search terms in each tab. So for instance, during the riots, I had a search for Wolverhampton and fire, Wolverhampton fight, Wolverhampton riot, Wolverhampton police, and obviously the different hashtags that were being used at the time. And so we could monitor it over it was 3 days in the end, but we monitored it the whole time. But you can use this on anything. I mean, when I used to work for a media company, I had searches set up for any mention of cinema or films or art or photography. And you can set the parameters within location as well. So you can search for location plus. And so I knew with the media company I worked in, we were based in Wolverhampton, so our target audience from that region. And so targeted that search to there, so we're only communicating with the relevant people.
Okay. Hootsuite, I mean, I also have some experience using it, and I think that is great. I think one challenge that both Sari and I face on international level is to monitor multiple languages. I mean, English, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, Arabic, Chinese. That is really difficult. I think for specific languages, I mean, English, then I think it's probably easier to use one tool, let's say like Hootsuite or Monitor or TweetDeck. But as I said, I mean, one of the reasons why we decided to invest in a commercial tool was simply to be able to monitor a broad range of languages.
See, that's something I didn't even consider. I must admit that's probably, being a bit naive, the fact that you just assume that you're going to monitor, just maybe browse over different platforms, and you just assume it's going to be in English.
Yeah.
But then obviously it's not at all. So is it technology that obviously allows you, do you have people who speak these languages, or is it technology that allows you to translate when you're looking at them?
I mean, don't get me wrong, we're still learning by doing, experimenting quite a bit as well. I think everyone is experimenting. From a Geneva level, I mean, we have teams monitoring mainly English and French, and then we have our regional communication centers in Buenos Aires, Moscow, Cairo, and Beijing, who monitor language versions. But the toolbox that we use differs from region to region, and we're still trying to find the really ideal tool to monitor social media. But I think, as Sarah says, organizations like the ICRC or WHO or other organizations in the UN and national system, still have troubles to justify if you want resources, both financial and human resources, to social media. So we use the tools we have, and Region 6, yes, that's one we use right now, and we pay for it, but let's see how successful it is in comparison to other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
I think just one other point I want to make, I mean, listening to what you were saying, I sense that we're, in particular what you said, Steph, about the Christchurch earthquake and also how the councils rapidly adopted social media. That is interesting, and it feels like organizations learn in crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree? Would you agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, just from looking from experience of that and looking at the response Wolverhampton have had prior to the riots, within a week of the riots, we got a phone call, and I mean, Val will recognise these names: Mel Wyatt, Mel Potter, and Pete Connolly from Wolverhampton City Council were on the phone to us going, help. So they very quickly realised that they needed to learn from it. So it's almost like there was a tipping point. I don't know if any of you are aware of a gentleman called Ben Proctor. He runs Like a Word, is at Like a Word on Twitter. He specialises in social media for crisis communications. And both he and I were speaking at the same conference, it was about 3-4 weeks ago now, and we had a conversation there which basically hinted on the same thing. Local councils definitely learn quicker when there's a tipping point that forces them to get a handle on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because almost they're very resistant to that because they can't see the benefits of it until something happens that makes them stand back and go, oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think that there needs to be, when local councils, should they go for every platform? Because you can never tell which platform is going to be the most popular, or should they kind of go for one or two? Should they just maybe focus on Twitter, or should they focus on Twitter, Facebook, and or do you think they should have a presence on everything? What's your take on that?
Are you talking to me there? Sorry.
Yeah, anyone but you.
Okay. Yeah, my take on that is it's trial and error for different departments, isn't it? As you're aware, and I'm going to use Wolverhampton as an example because it's the one I've got most experience with. The Parks Department, for instance, they've got Facebook pages, Dawn's got a blog, and they're on Twitter, and that's great. The LNP, which are the local neighbourhood partnerships that work under the local strategic enterprise, is that right? Anyway.
Yeah.
They're all just making a very, very tentative steps into Twitter. They have neighbourhood wardens who walk the streets and talk to the community. Now, I've just delivered their training, which is, I'll say this while we're in an open forum, Wolverhampton Council are making it incredibly difficult because they won't open up any of the apps on their Blackberries. They have to do it via draconian measures through the logging onto their BlackBerry, logging onto their browser, then logging onto Twitter, so it's really hard to get on. So I think it's horses for courses. I would definitely say, as a council as a whole, for a crisis communication, definitely Twitter. And looking at the demographics, particularly of our city, you'd be stupid to ignore Facebook. Because the actual take-up of Facebook in Wolverhampton is greater than the readership of the local newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of reaching, getting information to people, then those are the two definite rules. But you can always, to build confidence in those networks and build confidence and make people believe that what they're being told is true and it is accurate, then there is no reason why they shouldn't try and engage on multiple levels and multiple tools through blogging and through all kinds of different networks. Because what that does is it reaches an audience over a period of time. So when that crisis happens, you can point them to whichever channel you're going to choose to communicate through. So if you go, right, we're going to be updated through Twitter, you could post a link on all your other channels and say, there you go.